Welcome to the Changes Throughout History, where today we are looking at how India from the British Empire, the Gold Coast from the British Empire, and French West Africa gained independence. To educate us on this, we have Dr. Histori on the line. Take it away, Dr. Tori.
Thank you. Let's start with decolonization. Decolonization is when a country withdraws or is forced out of a colony. Usually the colony becomes its own separate state. Each one of these countries came to be colonized in different ways. India was controlled by the Mughal Empire before colonial powers like England, Portugal, and the Netherlands took control of pockets of land. Britain recruited its own army and began seizing control of India, sometimes through military force, sometimes through economic dominance. They were revolted against during the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857, leading the British dissolving their hired help, the East India Company, but kept control of its land. Conditions for Indians under British rule grew worse and worse. Poverty in India increased from about 23% to more than 50% from 1810 to the 1950s. The death rate increased, and the life expectancy of the average Indian was less than 22 years. Next, we move on to Ghana, previously known as the Gold Coast. The country takes its name from the Ghana Empire in earlier centuries, though the empire did not control what is now modern Ghana. The Portuguese were the first Europeans to land in Ghana, searching for gold and other luxury goods that they could make money off of. The Ashanti Empire rose in 1701 and traded with Europeans, and they played a big role in the slave trade. From 1826 to 1900, the British fought in the Ashantis for control of the land, and eventually in 1902, the British quests of imperialism succeeded and they won the land. The French controlled most of Algeria with its colonies, which were really a part of France from 1895 till 1958. Due to the unrightly rule over Algeria, where West Africans weren't given any power at all, they would eventually retaliate. The French had fought wars of independence before and lost, so they embarked a policy of promoting pro-French Africans into power to avoid retaliation against the rule. This did not last long. A resistance group called the FLN was formed and attacked a military base, which was eventually taken down. In Morocco, a sultan was put into place to follow whatever the French wanted, but he eventually became an African nationalists. Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia helped gain power over the French. In this next section, I will discuss how these colonies became their own countries. Indian resistance to British rule arose due to the conditions, and Indians advocated for more representation and control over the local government, with Alan Octavian Hume creating the Indian National Congress to negotiate. Mahatma Gandhi joined the Congress and used many forms of non-violent resistance to fight for independence, such as speeches and letters, leading marches, organizing protests and demonstrations, boycotting British goods and institutions, and leading prayer meetings. After the Rowlatt Act was passed in 1919, taking away many civil rights of Indian people, the protests increased. After the British began firing on a crowd of peaceful protests against the act, Gandhi organized the non-cooperation movement, where he started a boycott of cloth clothes made in Britain and weaved his own cloth in protests. The protests continued, and in 1930, the Indian National Congress declared independence from England, but it was organized by the British government. In response to this, Gandhi led followers on the Salt Satyagraha. I do not know how to say that. A long march to the sea, where he made his own salt from seawater in defiance of the law. Gandhi was arrested and thrown in jail in the same year because of these actions, but the protests did not stop, and Sarojini Naidu led another protest against the Darsana Salt Works, a British-owned salt company. During World War II, India started to break free, with Indians having their own rulers and laws alongside British ones. Gandhi then organized the Quit India movement, a large push to get the British to agree to leave India, which the British responded to with violence. Because of this, many Indians destroyed bridges and railroad tracks and sometimes reacted with physical fighting. Gandhi did not reprehend them, as he believed that the British were to blame for not having given up control. After World War II, Britain had depleted resources, and India was able to become an independent country on August 15th, 1942. Or 1947. Not two. The independence movement in Ghana began with Kwame Nkrumah. It led boycotts of British businesses in a mostly nonviolent movement. He was leader of the Convention People's Party, who by democratic vote won a majority of seats in the general election in 1951. The idea of a free nation for colonizers, who had played a role in their country for 400 years, grew and wanted to be free. On March 6, 1957, Ghana officially was independent from Britain and was the first African country to gain independence from a colonial ruler. Nkrumah stayed in office till 1966 when a military coup occurred, but 10 years later they were overthrown. Not until 1993 was the government truly stable, but ever since the country has been growing economically and many social reforms have taken place. Some of these reforms have been to change environmental issues with a warming climate and having the freedom of the press, which allows the government to be challenged. The end of the colonial period and establishment during 1957 and to 1976 of all the former colonies independent states was attributed to both the change in European attitudes towards Africa and the possession of colonies and an African reaction to colonial rule born of the economic and social changes it had produced. Europeans had colonized Western Africa in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, confident that their civilization was immensely superior to anything Africa had produced or could produce. Yet hardly had their colonies been established than these convictions began to be challenged.
Are you tired of your country not respecting you? Then come down to Joe's Signs, where we can get everything for peaceful protests. We got signs for Ghana, we got signs for India, we got signs for everything. So come on down and get 20% off your first order. Ever want an indoor beach? You're in luck, because our sand depot in Algeria has endless stock at cheap prices. Any amount of sand we can sell to you at a fraction of what you could get anywhere else in the Sahara.
To wrap things up, these three independence movements were all built on negotiation and removing a European colonizer. The independence movements in India, Ghana, and Algeria all negotiated their independence in some sort of way, had strong leaders that led the new countries through the long process and became successful nations today that have a role on a global scale.